Hello, my safe men and women that are working in the construction field, general industry, or general America. I've got another class for you, and today we're talking about miniature excavators, or mini-X's. Now, I contain no rights to any of the videos you're about to see, and if you would like to leave comments or thumbs up, go leave thumbs up on their sites. Go give them the appreciation. This being said, generically speaking, this is a familiarization class for mini-X's across the board. It is not focusing on one specific type. It is a generic mini-X video. Before you start operating a mini-X, first, you're going to need excavation training. So if you don't have that, I strongly recommend you go get that. Second, now you're going to also need to have a piece of equipment in mind. You're going to need to have the user manual for that piece of equipment. Next, your company safety manual needs to come into play here, as well as maybe your general contractor has a specific safety rules and requirements that need to apply. And then also you've always got some city ordinances, local restrictions, things like that I have no clue what you're dealing with. And then you always have Big Brother OSHA 1926 that most people in construction have to comply with. So I don't know all the rules you have to play by, but make sure that you talk to the competent person for your company to make sure you're complying with all rules. As a disclaimer, the people that are in these videos are not complying with OSHA, as they are not wearing ANSI approved safety glasses, nor are they wearing hard hats in most cases. These are instructor videos instructing. You, while you're out on the job sites, must comply with the rules and regulations that apply to you. So follow the rules. That being said, let's get right into it. Our first video comes to us from Heavy Metal Learning, What Not to Do in a Mini Excavator. Link in the description below.
Hey everyone, in this training video, we're gonna cover what not to do in a mini excavator. As new operators, even seasoned vets, you make a lot of mistakes. Thought we'd cover some of the top ones that we've seen. Check this out. Okay, so again, this is gonna be our what not to do. So as we've done these videos, if you go on our channel, you've seen a lot of how to operate. We thought we'd kind of put some of the top mistakes we've seen. You know, want to see operators put comments below and others they've seen. First things first, we've already done our pre-op inspection. We do have a separate video on mini excavator pre-op, so check our channel for that. And we've also we already know our site. We know we've checked for utilities, everything like that. And again, I'm not going to go over any of the basics of operating. That's in we have a 101 that goes over controls. So I'm going to cover just the top 5 that I kind of think I've seen and just wanted to go over for new operators. So first, the number one thing we're going to go over is the first one, I should say, mistake is really using the blade or the stabilizer bar. Again, people either call them a blade or a stabilizer bar on the front of a mini excavator, and they're really designed to make that machine longer. You know, the smaller the machine, the less stable it is. So in general, you know, forward, it's going to be in the front of you. So that's typically how you'll track forward, but it's actually the reverse for digging. You generally want to have that behind you. So I'm going to go ahead and spin around, and we're going to go in reverse here. So, say I track there. Now, a couple of things. Typically, you're going to find, especially on the other excavator, the larger one, we typically drive with our drives in the rear of the machine. That's 1 for weight, 2 just to protect them because they're a lot more expensive if you damage them. Minis are a little bit different with that. Is generally you want to actually have the blade behind you, and that's for digging purposes. So if you put it up front, it will. For a new operator, a lot of times you'll see in our entry level, we actually do have it right out in front, and that keeps a new operator from hitting your tracks. But as you're getting better at this, you really want to have that behind. And the big reason for that is it really spreads that out. So as I could show you both ways. If I don't dig over it and I put it out in front like this, you can actually see if I stretch out here, I absolutely, if I do this, I can pick up, it's a lot easier to pick up the machine. Even like that, I can pop it off. You see how my blade's up in the air a little bit. When you do that the other way, having that extended behind you is going to make you see I can't lift it up at all if I push this thing all the way forward. So that's why generally you're going to be better positioned to have the blade behind you kind of is pushing down. It kind of helps with, or it's, think of it almost like a counterweight, even though it's not really adding weight, it's adding length to it. The other thing, just while we're talking about that, is digging off the side of your track. So generally, you know, if you watch our other videos too, you'll see if you dig, your machine's much less stable if you're digging off the sides of your track. So it's a lot easier. I can pick up my machine when I don't have, when I'm that narrowest part of the machine. So generally you want to be straight up in line with your tracks. Again, ideally with the blade in the back, but you could also have it in the front if you're in a different scenario, but as long as you're going in line there. Now, so we're going to talk about a little bit. First, I'm going to talk about trenching. So as you've seen some of our other videos, you'll see generally we start all the way extended, teeth straight down. Now that's not typically how you want to trench in a mini excavator. We do it for new operators, but once you start getting better, you generally want to take a trench in layers. So what that means is you want to have your teeth almost at a 45, and you're going to drag that in and do about 6 to 12 inches at a time out of that trench. Couple reasons you do that. Typically you're doing that so if there were anything underground, utilities, anything like that that you weren't aware of, you're gonna, instead of going right down through a cable or whatever might be down there and curling through it, you'll hopefully get something exposed first if you're just taking it off in layers. And it's much more efficient with the machine if I am just scraping that up and taking 6 inches to a foot at a time. I also may not start the entire way out. You know, typically, so if you have your stick fully extended like that, a lot of times as we get better, I try not to hit those hard. If you hear that hard stop, it doesn't necessarily do damage, but you end up with better leverage the closer you are to that. So if I bring that down and in a little bit and have my teeth about 45, then I can bring it in and take a layer off for that trench. At the end here, I often will back off a little bit, let the material fall into the bucket or into the trench. So that's talking about trenching in layers, 6 to 12 inches at a time. Don't just go all the way out and curl. That's for a new operator. You don't just want to go out there and take a big old bite, teeth straight down 90 degrees. Now the other one, number 3, I'll go over what not to do. Typically, and this goes for all excavators, the further out from the machine you are, the less stable you are. You're putting a lot more strain on your arm, the entire machine. So typically, you can see, I can feel it even as I'm going out, fully extended like that. Typically, when you are moving material at all, you want to be, the closer you can bring that to your cab, the more stable you'll be. And this applies to a mini excavator, also applies to a full size. So you can, I'm not feeling that same sway, I feel much more stable. So a lot of times that's why you're layering, you're trenching in, and then once you have that, I'm keeping that load closer to me, and then I can extend it out and down a little bit and dump. You just don't want to have that bucket fully extended with that stick all the way out with a full load of material. Do one more here. Again, as I go, I'm keeping it somewhat close. I can extend it out then, but it's just you don't want to spin with it all the way loaded. Okay, so that's about, we talked about trenching. A lot of mistakes we see there where they're going out and taking a full bite, full bucket. And then the next thing we talked about is keeping that load close, the further out, which also will apply to the next one. So my 4th one is for new operators, not understanding your center of gravity on the mini excavator. You know, the mini excavators are a smaller machine. A lot of people think they're safer. I would actually say they're the opposite. Anytime you talk about skid steers, mini excavators, that smaller the base, you can get a lot more trouble a lot quicker in a mini excavator versus a large excavator because you're not dealing with as much weight at the base. So I'm going to go over and show you. I got some tires here. Again, when I don't have this listed as my mistakes, but I've also seen a new operator not realize that blade's down and they start driving. But we're not going to count that one on what I'm doing here. So if I'm going to go over. Okay, so the final one, or I think it's number 4, the mistake I'll see is knowing your center of gravity. So we talked about a little bit with material. I'm going to go over and I just have some big tires here that we're going to try and get all of them. or at least 2 of them. So, let's see if I can keep all those hooked. So the big thing here is just knowing your center of gravity. If I take this thing and go all the way out, same thing as with a dirt bucket. This is very easy. This is where operators, you can see how easily I'm able to pick up my back end like that. So that's why knowing that center of gravity on the machine, I definitely wouldn't want to drive or travel at all in this, but you can see how easy it is for me to move my back of the track there. So 2 things. One, you're going to want to keep that same thing we talk about, low and tight. I say this a lot in wheel loaders. Keeping that load as close to your center. Every machine has a center of gravity. You just got to know it. So 1 is keeping it just a little bit closer to you, and then 2 is being that length over the track, straight in line. So it is a lot tougher for me. You'll see I can't do as much where I'm going to be tipping my machine at all because I have those a lot closer to me. I understand where the center of gravity is on the machine. That is number 4. I'm going to stack these back. Another piece there, just using that, is always making sure that thumb is retracted before you start digging. I have seen some people have it down like this and they try and dig, and it's just, if you're not going to use your thumb, have it retracted all the way. That's number 4. Okay, so the 5th one, if you've seen any of my other what not to do, some of these are just at parking. So I'm going to line up here. I'm going to get a little bit straightened out here a little bit. So generally I park with that blade up front. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter, but a couple of things here. First of all, you do want your blade down, but the biggest thing I see is positioning. You always want to line up square. So with the excavator, the mini excavator is not as important for a step, but you'll see some guys that jump out at a job site and they might have it down like this. So if we put this down, right now I'm off square, so I don't have a step that's clean, I would say, because I have the bucket. So pull this up real quick. Right now, this is where you can get in a lot of trouble with stepping down in here, anything like that. So it's very important that you're square to your track. So I'll go back in. So that's why always making sure, now mini excavator, you're sitting more in the center, but at least seeing that you're roughly square to the tracks. Putting my blade down to make sure I'm stable. Then I'm pulling that down, then throttling it down, then shutting off. Now again, I'm square to my tracks now, it's very easy for me to get out and have a step all the way down, right there. Okay, everyone, so those are 5 of the top mistakes that we've seen on our sites. I'd love to hear from any operators out there. Please put in the comments below things that you've seen or learned from operating a mini excavator. So hope you guys enjoy this. We'll see you on the next one.
Our next video comes to us from Messick's Equipment, Excavator Operation for Beginners. ISO SAE controls parts of the machine. Link to their video in the description below.
Messick's, a helping hand with your land.
Neil from Messick's here, out today on a Kubota KX033 mini excavator. Gonna walk through here with you today on some excavator operations basics. If you're gonna be renting a machine or getting to own one of these for the very first time, I'll run through how the different controls here work and talk you through some of the new tips that you might want to know as a new operator. Now, before we start going through the excavator controls, you should know that there's really two different control patterns that you'll find on machines. They're known as ISO controls or SAE controls. In the United States, SAE controls are the more popular control pattern. And on a machine like this that has pattern selection, they're generally going to be pattern A. Now, if you've run a machine like this before, as you kind of learn how these controls work and you stop thinking about what you're doing, it's almost like riding a bike, right? You'll stop thinking about what the controls do and just start operating the machine. And you'll talk to anybody who's figured this out, that's run these things before. Changing patterns is like learning a different language. It's really, really challenging. So if you've never run a machine before and you're going to start on this for the first time, generally it's going to be a better choice to be in that SAE pattern or pattern A, like I've set this up for currently. If you look right down here, you'll always find a sticker denoting where that pattern selection is. Sometimes it's underneath of a safety cover, but in the case right here, it's right on this machine over top of the sticker here from California that tells us that we're going to get cancer from operating this machine. So thankfully we're in Pennsylvania, we should be okay, but you'll find that pattern selection here and you can make that switch so that you're operating the machine in the most comfortable and familiar way for you. So I'm going to start the machine up here and run you through what the control layout looks like for ISO controls. So I'm going to start the machine. When you go to start one of these for the first time, you'll notice it didn't start. That's because this safety lever has to be in the up position that disables the controls. Push that down. And now I'm going to run through my controls. So on my left hand side over here, if I take my stick and go left to right, it's going to rotate the upper part of the machine. The upper part of an excavator is called the house. If I go front and back, I'm going to take the dipper in and out. And then over on my right hand side, if I take this side left to right, I'm going to rotate my bucket. And if I go in and out here, I'm going to raise my boom up and down. So you have two functions on each one of those sticks. If I want to drive the machine forward and back, every excavator is going to have two sticks in front of you, and those are always oriented with the front of the machine being over top of the blade. You have to remember you can spin these things in circles, so if you're facing this direction, this is front, right? Not the direction that my boom is facing. Where my blade is always the front of the machine. So if you're facing over the front and you press the two drive sticks front, you're going to go forward or backwards. Now these two sticks here are going to operate much like a zero-turn mower or a skid loader does, where if I rotate them in opposite directions, I drive my left and right side independently. When you're driving, particularly on turf, you generally don't want to do spins in place because those tracks are going to do a lot of turf damage. So it's always best to try to turn left to right by driving forward and then keeping the outside track moving a little bit faster. You'll do less turf damage that way. You don't ever really want to be turning with the tracks still, right? You always want to keep them moving. Smaller excavators like this will have a pivot right down here in the boom where the boom can turn independently left to right from the house. Large excavators generally don't have that. The boom will be situated somewhere back here by your side. But in the case of this, I have a foot pedal down here in the floor that can swing my boom from left to right. This is generally used if you're going to get up, say, against the side of a house and you need to be in confined spaces. Rotating this allows you to be closer to things. You'll notice that this excavator is equipped with a thumb. The operation of those boom hydraulics on these machines is done with a rocker switch up here on your operation stick. On some older machines, sometimes you'll see those operated with foot pedals down here, kind of where my boom swing is. Sometimes you'll have one on your left foot. In this case, it's done up here on the controls. You'll notice here, if I operate this right now, it doesn't work. You need to turn on your auxiliary hydraulics in order for them to function. So if we press the aux button down here, it will turn on my thumb, and now I can rock this thing back and forth in order to grab stuff. In the advanced course here, we tell you that you can dive in and do some configurations on these hydraulic circuits, oftentimes to change the amount of flow that they have or to be able to toggle them on and off for different kinds of attachments that you would put out there. So tampers and hammers and that kind of thing are going to have different setups for the hydraulics in the monitor pod down here than what this thumb would be. Generally, I'm operating at idle right now, but as you turn up your RPMs up here, you're going to have more hydraulic flow. Now, the faster the engine is going, the faster the hydraulics are going to move. So when you're learning one of these for the very first time, it's often not a bad idea to have this thing running a little bit slower. Just helps things move a little bit more fluidly. But as you do raise that up and your engine goes faster, you're also building hydraulic pressure, and generally you need that pressure in order to have digging force. So idling one of these things, you're not going to get its full capacity out of it. You can see I have a front blade here. I use that blade to go up and down with my left-hand stick over here, and I also have a green button on top of it. That's because this machine has 2-speed track motors. So when you're driving an excavator, they generally are not fun to transport with. They're generally very slow, but you can speed them up by pressing the 2-speed button. So if I'm driving along here and I pop that green button, I can go into a little higher gear and shift those motors up a little bit faster. Some of the more recent models will have automatic shifting track motors that will load sense and shift on their own. This machine doesn't have that equipped, but there are other models that do. Generally, you're going to need to have that turned off when you're making tight turns. So these aren't machines that are exactly in high speed, especially known for their tractive power. You can push a little bit with the blade and get some work done, but you're certainly not going to move mountains. But if you're on asphalt and trying to turn, you need to be in low range in order to be able to rotate the machine. So if you're coming off of a trailer for the first time and you can't rotate the machine, it's often probably because you're in too high of a gear with your track motors. So that's a little bit on the operation of an excavator. If getting onto one of these for the very first time, you just need to be patient with yourself and give yourself some time. Really, ideally, what you need to do is know what the controls do and simply start to work through them and use them to the point that you stop thinking about what you're doing and you start tackling the job at hand. So be patient with yourself when you jump into one of these for the very first time. I'm going to do some follow-up videos here as well, showing some of the technique that you might want to learn when doing this for the very first time. So follow along on subsequent videos here. We'll see that we can teach you about running an excavator. So if you're in the market for a piece of equipment like this, or you have parts or service needs for one that you already have, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at messick's.com.
And our final video comes to us from the fabulous folks at WorkSafe BC, electrical safety, underground contact. Link in the description below.
No, I got concrete coming on Monday for building 4. No, on Tuesday I got drywall coming for building 6 and building 8. So I
must have hit the power line. The whole area could be energized.
Everybody stay back!
Call the power company. I'm gonna back out the machine.
Okay.
Before any digging begins, always contact BC One Call and locate all underground utilities. If the ground does become energized, the area around the point of contact for at least 10 meters will be hazardous. If you do make contact with a power line and can safely move your machine out of contact, do so. For more information on working near underground utilities, go to WorksafeBC.com or bchydro.com/besafe.
That's all we got, folks. As a reminder, talk to the competent person for your company, for your job site before you hop on any machine, and always check for underground utilities before you dig or anything else in the ground. Who knows what people put in the ground. Y'all have a great day. Deuces.